and we were invited to it. Len Wein and myself and my fiance were there. And Len and I were literally, I think, 3 times as old as the average age of the people that we were sitting with. And so it was very surreal. I mean, young people here, you're fine and everything, but honestly, under the age of 40, you all look about 15 maybe. And to you, I'm sure we look like 15.
Give my regards to Len Fine. How about that?
No, Len Wein.
Len Wein. I got a little story about he and I. We were in Albuquerque, and Stan Lee was supposed to have a panel, and he had to leave early. Then Len and I find we're the only ones. Stan and his entourage had to leave. And we had hundreds of people, and really all filled from every seat. I said to Len, we have to do something, and we did. Not one person left. We had them just sitting tight and kept that audience interested from very beginning to end. And I wrote to Stan, what the hell are you doing? You're leaving us guys? He called me a showman. Hear what I called him? No, not really.
Yeah, since Stan Lee's name came up, Stan was my first boss at Marvel. And when I first started working in comics, and I would tell people I was a comic book writer, the first question always was, does that mean you draw the pictures? Now, as about 5-6 years, the first question everybody asks me is, do you know Stan Lee? And since he was my first boss, and we talked, 3-4 times a year, yeah, I do know Stan Lee. And I went up to Los Angeles in January just to visit old friends when there wasn't a convention around us. And I told Stan I was coming to town, and he says, come up to my office. And I spent a morning with Stan and got my new favorite Stan Lee story. You walk into the offices of POW Entertainment, and what you see is a blow-up of an old Marvel Western comic, Black Rider, had a photo cover of this masked gunman, and it's Stan Lee who had posed for the photo. And I made a joke to Stan about, why did you stay in comics? You could have been a Western movie hero. And Stan proceeds to tell me this great story. He's playing hooky for Marvel. And one of the things he loved doing was riding in Central Park. So he goes to the stables in Central Park, and he gets this great looking horse, thoroughbred, and he can't wait to just open this horse up, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to stay on the trails and not go too fast. Stan didn't stay on the trail, went as fast as he could. Well, as he's galloping along, a mounted policeman spots him. And a mounted policeman comes after Stan, and he's cursing at Stan, yelling at him. And Stan starts acting like he doesn't have control of the horse. So all of a sudden it goes from the mounted policeman cursing at Stan to, don't worry, sir, I'm gonna be with you all the way. I'm not gonna let you get hurt. I'm gonna be with you all the way. So when Stan gets, when Stan gets tired of galloping through the park, he goes back to the stables, and gets off the horse, and the policeman comes over, are you all right, sir? Are you all right, sir? And Stan goes, I was really nervous, I was really scared, but once I knew you were with me, I was okay.
Now they ask Stan Lee, do you know Alan Bellman? Just kidding. But I like to tell you a story. In Asbury Park, I was invited, I told you about that, to an interview at a convention in Asbury Park, and a very interesting interview. And I was asked, I told them I had the first issue of Superman. They asked me, "You still have the first issue of Superman?" I said, "Would I be sitting here if I had it?" And there was a writer for the Wall Street Journal who wrote that in a paper in the Wall Street Journal. That's even better than the New York Times. There's so many stories to tell. I mean, we're here with different people of different various aspects of Marvel Comics. I feel blessed that I was there in the beginning, and those who followed and really brought this up higher and higher and higher. And I want to say something about Stan Lee, that he really made Marvel Comics. I mean, Stan Lee presents, he's a bit of a showman himself, and giving credit to everybody, and so forth and so forth. So, sometimes you got to say, hey, you got to give Guy credit for what he did, has done.
Gerry, that's one of the things they always bring up, was the whole Stan Lee Presents banner. You were on staff when that was instituted. Did Stan have a direct hand in that, or was that something that was decided?
Well, that followed upon Cadence Industries buying out Mark Goodman. And part of the deal was they wanted Stan to be the publisher and editor-in-chief. And Stan actually didn't want to remain editor-in-chief because he, wanted to pursue other things. So they were saying, well, we still want your name on the books because you're the most, the face of the comics and so on. And we said, well, then, we can just, put a Stan Lee Presents, on the title of the movie. And that was the entire purpose of it,
So it wasn't Stan's ego needing to be
No,
fed, it was all business.
It was
See? All you Stan haters! Get off his back!
The thing to remember about Stan, for all the fact that Stan, certainly isn't shy about taking credit for things, is that he's also very generous about sharing credit. He's the first editor that actually put the credits of writers and artists on the books. Before Stan came along, it was anonymous. You didn't know who was doing it. But in the early 60s, he started giving credit. Now, partly that was partly because he wanted to put his own name out there. But the effect was to give people like letterers credit who had never had it. And I think we have to acknowledge that.
Some questions? Yes, sir.
My suspicions are that in the beginning it was a lot of fun to work on Marvel. So my question to you is, what's the politics like working at Marvel today? And is it, well, you guys don't have anything to do with it?
Why not read the panel there?
I forget it.
About all I can tell you is that in recent years, as I've seen it, especially since Disney bought Marvel, I've seen Marvel do incredibly generous things for people, and there's no better example of that than Bill Mantlo, a fine writer from the 70s and 80s, left comics, became a lawyer, was involved in a hit-and-run accident and suffered traumatic brain injury, which he's never really recovered from. He's been in a nursing home for decades. Bill, among his many other things he did for Marvel, he created Rocket Raccoon. Marvel arranged to have a special showing of Guardians of the Galaxy at the nursing home for Bill and his entire family. And they paid him money too. Marvel has, and obviously I don't know all the details of all the deals. Anything I've been involved in, I'm not allowed to talk about, except to say I'm very happy with Marvel. But Bill's face lit up when he saw Rocket Raccoon, and of course they paused during the credits to show Rocket Raccoon created by Bill Mantlo and Keith Giffen, and it was the biggest, his brother told me, it's the biggest grin they've seen on Bill's face since the accident. My own father passed away recently, and I actually got a plant and a condolence card from Marvel Comics, a company I've not written for in over 2 decades. When I was a kid, it was Make My Marvel, and now I'm like 160 years old, and it's still Make My Marvel. I really am fond of the company. Any other questions? Yes, second row.
Yeah.
Yeah, him. Then we'll get to you.
Okay. Proudest Marvel moment for each one of you.
Probably my proudest Marvel moment was getting the opportunity to write Spider-Man and seeing my name, on a Spider-Man comic book. That was like awesome to my 10-year-old self. Because it was only about 8 years after my 10-year-old self, so it was even more awesome. So that would have been it. I mean, the idea of being able to fulfill your childhood fantasies, you know, and work for a company that had so much of an impact on my adolescence, you know, it was just a miracle. So that was my happy moment.
Now, Gerry was a star, and I was a utility player. So I can't point to any one thing I did, although I thought I did some pretty good work at Marvel, but it was the opportunity to work with the people that made me love comics. And in many cases, to be their editor on things, and to bring new people into Marvel. I gave John Byrne his first Marvel job. Tom Orzechowski, great letterer, was my first Marvel hire. I gave Bill Matlow his first writing job. He was in production, he was a bright guy, I needed a writer. Writing's not brain surgery. And Bill was wonderful at it. So the combination of working with so many greats that I grew up reading, and then being able to bring new people into the field as well, I look back on those days with tremendous fondness that I was able to do those two things.
Let's go back to the golden age. There was an artist by the name of Mike Sikowski, about 18. Man, he was good, but he had a nasty disposition. I pass him by, say, how you doing, Mike? He says, what do you care? Next to him was his girlfriend, Valerie Barkley. I remember Valerie Barkley when we went to the High School of Industrial Art in New York City. She stood on the stairs waiting for the bell to ring for going to, class. She was a beautiful young lady with jet black hair, blowing in the wind, stood by herself like a goddess. She wound up working in town as an inker. She used to put India ink on her eyes, using it as mascara. And that, I often wondered, she's going to go blind. Or she's going to start seeing little figures or something. But now, next to Barkley sat George Klein, an artist, a debonair, handsome guy, wore a Homburg. If you young guys don't know what a Homburg is, it came after the Derby. It was a nice-looking fedora. Well, anyway, Mike and Valerie were noted as boyfriend and girlfriend. But then George Klein was a nicer-looking man than Mike Sikowski. And there were rumors, and Mike went to Stanley and says, I want you to fire Valerie. I said, otherwise I quit. And Stan says, goodbye. Didn't quit. Oh, you had to bring him up. Dr. Wortham was a crazy psychiatrist who wrote a book called Seduction of the Youth, blaming comic books for the failure of the family breakdown with the children. And boy, that really left Stan Lee packing, and they were going to go out of business, and it put me out of the comic book business for a while. And let me tell you something, but he altered my life, Dr. Wortham. They years later, what he wrote was not true. He wrote a book to alter his ego or whatever, or add to his ego. But it put me out of the comic book business, and I went into business, and I made money, you know. When you work with someone, come Thursday, the day before going in, you're counting car fare to go into work. You know, it's just that. And I was married at an early age of 20. If I was still married to my first wife, I'd be dead. Well, let me tell you something. She buried 2 husbands after me. No, this is true. Somebody said to me, how'd I escape? I said, I didn't eat the mushrooms. That's a joke, but it's true. 2 guys passed on. You know, you don't gloat when you see things. She's in a sort of a nursing home now. And you know, life takes such turns in it for people. I'm kind of thankful, and you know, I kind of feel blessed. I try to give back, you know, what's given to me. I'm 90 now, you know. You think it was easy getting here? Well, let me say, you know, I feel an honor being with these gentlemen here that came after me. They really helped to build up Marvel. I think our kind of older guys are more or less forgotten by the companies. We're has-beens, let's say, in a term. I have reason for speaking like it, but so the new guys that came in the Silver Age and so forth, they are good. They are good. And the guys today are much better. You know, they say, well, they use computers. Someone has to draw it. Someone has to write it. And my hat's off to these gentlemen now of today who are working in the comic book industry. But they still like the golden age of comics. And that's why I'm here today.